Good morning and welcome to another iteration of OTC Live. We're excited this month to be partnered with ODevs to have a conversation about building from the idea stage to MVP and really learning about the different opportunities within our Orlando ecosystem. Well, good morning. I'm Paul Coulter. I partner with Bob Reed to help facilitate the OTC discussions on a monthly basis, first Tuesday of every month. And this is my month to be able to support this. And I'm really excited to have the roundtable from the OTC or from the ODevs team here. We're excited to have Jacques, who is the founder of ODevs here. Caitlin Augustin, who is the president of ODevs, and she'll be able to dive into some of the new initiatives and things that are going on this morning. Chris Pecoraro, he runs web development over at Rollins College, is an advisor for ODevs. And then Austin is one of the long-term champions for ODevs and has been critical backbone to their growth and their success. So we're so excited to have you here. Welcome. Just to get started, I wanted to kick it off to Caitlin. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're newly stepped into the role with ODevs to lead the charge, and talk a little bit about your background and where you see ODevs kind of taking that next step.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me today. So I'm Caitlin Augustin. I'm the Vice President of Product and Programs at DataKind in my day job. And then as of a couple of weeks ago, I'm now the president of ODevs. And my history with ODevs, I actually was the lead of the Orlando Lady Devs community about 5 years ago, and came into this as a eager tech student, and then an eager junior developer who really wanted to build community and use technology for good. My day job and the work that I do is in applying data technology and AI tools for social impact. And the reach of the Orlando devs community, about 8,000 people across multiple channels, running meetups of 100 or more on a monthly basis. We really have the ability to connect people from all sectors and all levels to really drive impact and innovation in Orlando. And that's been one of the things that I've been so excited about throughout my time in Orlando. And it's one of the things that we're really looking forward to in this next phase of ODevs. We're really building connections and partnerships across the sector, from entrepreneurship and traditional tech, but also into the nonprofit and civic tech spaces, to figure out how our community and the skills within our community can really make a difference across Orlando.
I think that's awesome, and it's great to see. And from our previous conversations, obviously your passion in the nonprofit and advancing these social advocacy, I would say, is evident and just kind of emanates from the conversations with you. So thank you and welcome. We're glad to have you here. Austin, I'd like to head to you next, since you kind of know so much of the history and have been an integral part of the build. I know you're doing some amazing work with Echelon right now, leading their development and what the product looks like and some of the innovation there. But maybe you can get everybody else up to speed on your involvement with ODevs and what brought you here today.
Sure. So, back in the day, the Orlando tech community was, it's incredibly diverse in a lot of ways. So you have, your defense area contractors, you have your, guys that are working on hardware and firmware, in particular, in a lot of that space. And then you have, an amazing hospitality industry, which is and has a lot of tech. I think you see that at the Universals and the Disneys and how they're constantly trying to push stuff forward. But you have a lot of businesses in Orlando too that are incredibly tech heavy. And it started out kind of as a Slack group, just get to know other people in the community and network. And then it turned into lunches, and then it turned into, hey, this thing should actually be a org that we can help people with, whether that's people transitioning into tech or people who are, established in tech, that want to build a portfolio of some kind, whether that's speaking or, advising others. We've done a lot with the city of Orlando as well, helping them push some of their tech initiatives forward. And so that's really kind of where it started and what it's grown into thus far.
Excellent. We're excited for you to be a part of it, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about the domino impact that you've had as we go along. Chris, welcome. We're excited about the partnership with Crummer and everything that Rollins has to offer. Maybe get everybody up to speed about your involvement.
Sure. So after around 20 years in tech, living in Pittsburgh, I then moved abroad. And then after coming back to the US, I landed here in Orlando. And then I found ODevs, like most people, and rekindled the PHP group. And then actually found the role at Rollins College through the ODevs jobs channel. And
cool.
Completed the MBA program there and became the director of web development. And yeah, of course, Rollins has a lot of involvement with entrepreneurship. They have a social entrepreneurship major, and then the business school has a business competition annually, I believe, and helps to promote and foster ideas.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and really what we're trying to accomplish today, and for the audience, right? We have a mixture of founders, we have entrepreneur support organizations, we have investors in our audience, we have other people that are just curious about the innovation that's happening in Orlando, right? From a media standpoint and an impact standpoint. And I think it's really cool to see how we've kind of curated this conversation from the educational sector, like and how ODevs directly impacted your career, right? With your role now. Certainly the social well-being, the early stage startup, and the larger enterprise, right? So we kind of have all these sectors represented. So thanks, Chris. We're glad to have you here. And Jacques, hey, you founded it all. You got this ball rolling initially. What was the spark? And I know it wasn't just you alone; it was a team of people. But obviously, there was that spark. There was that initiative to create something. Maybe you can fill us in on a little bit of that context.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jacques Fu, for the audience, I've had multiple exits. So I'm also have an entrepreneurial background as well as software engineering. I was building my last startup. It was a company called Stax. I was the CTO co-founder there. At the same time, I had started attending a couple of these Orlando Dev meetups, and also seeing kind of where the community was headed. And there were a lot of there were all these different languages sort of that needed to be served, or different roles, right? So you have your data people, your mobile devs, people who program in this language, people who program in that language. And so, originally I was talking to Sergio, was running these meetups. So before it was an organization, it was a meetup, and we were doing it out of the or they were doing it out of the Power DMS. I think was like one of the big areas that they have. It was a really nice space when that was available to us. And so they were looking to organize, and curious about, if it made sense to be a nonprofit. And so I just kind of, I wrote the check to fund the operating accounts and to get us our, all of our filing papers in order to apply for that 501c3 status. And lo and behold, it actually became, a critical, I think, part of the community, the developer community. During the pandemic, a lot of things shut down, and we were seeing just startups closing, or meetups closing left and right. And so it was, nice to have sort of this umbrella organization. So we serve, the developer community, but we also, serve the JavaScript community and the PHP community, and the Orlando Lady Devs and different things. And so so we were able to keep over 8,000 developers in the Orlando Devs network connected throughout that time, and came out better for it on the other side.
Man, that's exciting. It's cool to see how things grow over time, and putting the right ingredients together, creates something magical. I mean, you were talking about this, right? There's the umbrella, and then there's all these sub segments that are specific, like the Lady Devs. Do you want to dive into a little bit more context there? Anybody, I'll open it up to everybody. Maybe you can highlight a couple of the sub communities with specifics.
Yeah. I'll kick off and then look to Chris to actually go a little deeper into the PHP group. But Orlando Devs, we are 10 different organizations. So Orlando Devs as the overall umbrella organization, we have 9 subgroups underneath us. So we hold the Orlando Innovation League and Accelerate Orlando, which are 2 innovation-focused organizations. Obviously, tech plays a heavy role, but they're not exclusive to technology and development. We have specific PHP and JavaScript, so very specific languages as meetups. We also run Codex, which is a group focused on juniors. Lady Devs as an affinity group for women and allies in technology. DevOps, and then Open Orlando, which is actually one of Austin's groups that is the former Code for Orlando organization. And so all 9 of those groups, and then the 10th, the Orlando Devs as the overhead, have meetups on varying cadences, and really look to provide a no wrong door into the tech community in Orlando, that we want people at every stage of their career, every kind of a level of interest, to be able to find a place in the Orlando developer community. And if that is through hiring, through skill building themselves, through building partnerships, through getting career mentorship, we try to make that place available for everyone. But Chris, I think we have an upcoming PHP meetup, so over to you. So.
We have something on the schedule, something social in collaboration with the JS meetup. But yeah, as you said, of course, each people that use a particular programming language are very passionate about that. So of course, as you said, all the groups are open to everybody, but people that use a specific programming language are always trying to solve a problem that day. So, or hey, I have an idea, or I found a cool tool I want to show everybody. And so these languages like PHP and JavaScript that are underneath these large tools like WordPress and Drupal and front-end frameworks like React, I think are, really good places where people can hang out, meet, hang out with their old friends, meet new people, have some pizza, and discuss ideas. That's, I think pretty much what we're doing.
Exciting. Well, and I think that's the idea of this is, right, there's an awareness level in Orlando of, hey, there is the right specific group for me. There are the right people. There's my tribe. How do I get connected with my tribe? Or maybe you're a non-technical founder, right? Like if you're a developer, there's the right tribe, there's the right fit, there's the right people to find your peers and be able to problem solve. Or if you're a non-technical founder, there's an opportunity to get connected with the right technical expertise to be able to help transform that vision into, a new innovation that's MVP stage and sellable, right? So exciting. I see there's a number of contents or questions in the comments, like where can we find this group? Like where do we go to find our tribe? So maybe I'll open that to the team to talk about that. But I wanted to kick it over to Austin and talk about some of your subgroups as well, and your involvement in those and how you've seen impact over the years.
Yeah, so I really started off in the mobile realm. I'm a mobile developer by trade. I've worked with a bunch of startups in Orlando that you've never heard of, a bunch that you have heard of. Now I'm, then kind of went to little bit larger companies, and Echelon is decent size. We sell into every major retailer in the United States, as far as like Walmarts and Costco's and Targets and those types of things. So started in the mobile realm with a lot of people either trying to get into mobile, because this backs up to 2014, 2013. Mobile was somewhat fresh then. And people were trying to learn, is this the next big thing? Are we trying to, maybe I want to move from web to mobile, because that was somewhat of a trend then. The DevOps guys, really trying to come and understand, what do I need to get this running, and what does, actually, a great example, I gave a talk quite a few years ago on how to build an API for a mobile app. And mobile apps were much more constrained then, particularly with 3G versus 5G, for example, cell service. And so I ended up giving the same talk at the mobile group, the PHP group, the DevOps group, really kind of going cross, departmental, we'll say. And what we ended up doing was realizing that there's a very wide breadth of tech in Orlando, and we all decided that at some point we wanted to really partner and use some of our free time as an impact tool, because we had a lot of people trying to figure out how to get into tech or how to move from one thing to another. And a lot of times you need sample projects and stuff to do that. Well, sample projects on your own sometimes can be innovative. Other times they're just a proof of concept to prove that I did something. And we said, okay, why don't we harness this? So what we did was we ended up coming together. Andrew Kozlik, who also is an entrepreneur and started a great company called Recipe Box, said, okay, well, why don't we do a Code for Orlando chapter, which was part of Code for America. And so we really started working with the city on, what data do you have that we can use, and we'll build something for free for you. And what this allowed was for, junior people who didn't have a way to have organized experience to come in and participate in a project that they could put on their resume and say, I did this with a team. We were using, production technologies, and this isn't something that I just wrote by myself. And, really look at areas in the community that we can make impacts, whether it was services the city offered, and parking or rent assistance or other programs, and really kind of being able to leverage those and give people something that they could put on their resume as they were, exploring joining the tech community.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think it's really intriguing, especially, you have all these niches wherever you're at in your development stage. If you're, leading teams, or if you're just coming out of college and you're looking for those first opportunities, right? Or if you're a founder and you need talent, but don't have a lot of capital, there's the right place to. This is a good well to dive into, right? To find those resources and find.
If you're a founder in Orlando, Orlando Devs is a great place to go and start networking. If you're looking at different staffing solutions, like someone's going to make overhead somewhere, and networking locally in Orlando, listening to people talk, getting to know people, and you can really get a feel for who could potentially be an impact player for whatever you're trying to do, and allocate capital in a more cost efficient manner, than trying to use different services and those types of things. I probably over the years I've probably hired 30 to 40 people in the Orlando Devs nucleus or surrounding portions. whether that's someone I met up at a meetup that may have not been in the Slack group, or people who are in our Slack, soon to be Discord group, talking about different technologies. Because we have those broken out online too. So if you're looking for an Android person or an iOS person, like there's 2 channels you can follow, see who's participating, engage their interest, and perhaps joining what you're doing.
Awesome.
And Paul, I'll just jump on that as a big +1 to say, ODevs runs a really robust job board. So we have an active channel where members of the community are posting jobs for hire. Austin just mentioned he's hired 30 or so people. I haven't hired quite that many, but I think I've hired at least 5 or 6 at this point. I know Jacques has as well. So we try to support hiring within the community, and we're also pushing out like additional jobs and opportunities, particularly for like remote work, to keep people in the Orlando community.
Yeah, that's so cool. It was interesting. I actually just mentioned ODevs to a friend yesterday. He's wrapping up an AI voice product initiative that he's got and is looking for his next client. I was like, oh, you got to get tapped into ODevs. Like some of the stories that have come out were pretty impactful. I want to come back to this, but while we're kind of talking on the topic of talent and early stage and coming out of college, like you mentioned, Austin, Chris, you've got Rollins there, you've got UCF, you've got UF, USF, you've got this amazing amalgamation of talent coming from the Central Florida high tech corridor, right? Talk about that, and talk about the transition from the educational environment into what Rollins does along with ODevs to kind of help catapult people to the next stage.
Sure. So Rollins has hosted on several occasions some of the ODev meetups, and that gives the students an opportunity to network with their local entrepreneurs and also developers who are working. I think sometimes coming out of a program, you're sort of like a lot of involved with like the philosophical side of things, and you need more sort of like rubber on the road and more like tangible examples. So the students that are creating GitHub repositories can then sort of say, hey, I have this idea, or, would you look at this? Here's my portfolio. So I think that that's a good opportunity for them to pivot into it. And some of the students will do computer science majors and then go into the MBA. I have an intern who did that, and, she's on a good path for success right now. And you're trying to get it involved, around 21, 22 years old, just to get involved as much as possible with the local scene and start to make those connections and explore opportunities.
Yeah. Awesome. And Jacques, you've led some pretty sizable organizations from startup and grown it from ground up when it was bootstrapped all the way up. Maybe talk about how the ODevs community and that involvement has helped kind of fuel the talent that you needed to be able to get these ventures to the next stage.
Yeah, well, I'll point to a great example, especially when you're early stage, right? Like you can find people that are really going to be your, either your co-founders or just founding team members, right? And so I'll just point to a specific example. A good friend of mine, David Johnson, was the first engineer that that we hired at Stax. It took a while before we could afford, to lay out the payroll for that. And so, I think at the time, David did not have any work experience. He did graduate from a boot camp. But he not only came in as our mobile developer because we needed a mobile app. So we're like, we don't know anything about this. Let's go talk to someone. He not only did that, but he ended up converting. And I think it's his. I would attribute that. Maybe he can speak up if I'm wrong. But he ended up converting to a full stack engineer. So he went from mobile to back end, front end development. And stayed with the company till our unicorn valuation. And so I would attribute the trajectory. The first employee the trajectory of the company as being very tightly coupled. So who knows where we would have been without David.
So non-technical founders, if you hear that and you need to get connected, I mean, these guys are great resources to help you find that right technical partner in that. And, huge tribute to you for recognizing the talent, being able to structure it the right way and get to that point where then he can grow and really take the next step. What's he doing today? Is he still collaborating with you, or did he jump to another company, Jacques?
Oh yeah, so yeah, he still works at Stax.
Okay, gotcha. No, it's exciting to see the growth and how that continues. Well, let's talk about a little bit more on the job board, since we're talking about talent and finding job board. Who wants to really dive in and describe what that looks like, or how does this work within the different subgroups, or is it consolidated on the top end?
I'll jump in to say, sign up for the ODevs newsletter, because we do have a number of sponsors. Worth AI is one of them, and we're constantly posting their Blue Wave is another one. Constantly posting in our newsletter jobs that are coming out of our community, but also join our Slack. We'll be migrating to Discord this summer, but in our chat community, we have a community run job board. So we have a channel where everyone can post out jobs and can post if they're looking for jobs. And we really help in that matchmaking and that connection building around the job search process. And one thing I'll also add is every year now for the past couple of years, toward the start of the summer, we've run meetups focused on job placement and mentorship. So we'll be tracking to do one now mid-summer this year. So it's toward the end of June, but where we work to have a panel of sort of recent grads, early career, mid-career, late career, having a conversation about what does it take to build a career in tech in Orlando, be it as a pure language specific developer, be it as a analyst, be it as a manager of developer teams. What skills do you need? How do you get those skills? And it's a really strong networking opportunity and a real chance to build those connections. Jacques, why don't you jump in with a little bit more around sort of the job placement? I'll also give a lot of credit to Brian Rinaldi, who was our outgoing president, who handed the reins over to me about 2 weeks ago, for really pushing that job and that connection and that mentorship community there. So.
Yeah, I heard there were quite a few stories. I know, like Isabella Johnston found some development support for some of her ventures. There are a couple others that you guys mentioned. If anything comes to mind that you want to talk about from a example standpoint.
Yeah, so I'll give a couple. I have a guy who applied quite a few times to work for me back in the day. Kept pushing his skills. Finally, we had a junior opening, and he ended up being the best candidate. He stayed for a few years. I think he was with me for 4 years. And then now he's a principal staff engineer at Reddit working on their mobile apps. Another guy, shout out to Matt Dupree, K-Matt. He called himself the philosophical hacker, who kind of blended philosophy and coding in a very unique, interesting way. That was actually very enjoyable to. I think he may be one of my only employees whose blogs I ever read. But he turned. I gave him his first professional job, and he ended up. He just did a AI platform called Atlas for AI. Would you describe as product management, Jacques? I would say it's product management.
Yeah. To expand the sort of analytics and so forth to the rest of the company.
Yeah. So I mean, two people from junior to either technical founder or very high technical ranking at a very large internet company. So it's with the right mentorship and the right drive, like it's pretty easy to go from junior to having very, very good technical skill sets to be able to impact even some of the largest internet orgs.
Yeah, that's a great story, just in terms of career advancement, how having your own support system within these construct communities, can be so valuable. So what I've heard so far is the meetups, the live events, the virtual events, the events are super impactful for transformation within the development community. Number two, the job board opportunities are something that should not be missed, especially if you're in the development space or looking for development talent. Go to ODevs and check that out. And then certainly like the projects where you get the experience, you build your repertoire and your expertise are great opportunities, and speaking opportunities on top of that really can help advance your career. That's what I've heard. What else am I missing about ODevs? Anything?
Well, I think, a little bit of this, the focus of this conversation is that idea to impact. And I think pulling on some of the hackathons that ODevs has been a part of. So about a year and a half ago in November of 23, the company I work for, DataKind, partnered with ODevs and Second Harvest and a couple of other social impact organizations in Central Florida to run a weekend-long hackathon. And we had this question where we said, there is so much information about our community. Surely we could turn that information into action and match services to individuals across Central Florida. We knew there's a big need gap. We knew there's a lot of information on who provides those services, but we couldn't connect them. Over the course of a weekend, about 60 developers from the Orlando community hacked on that problem. They said, okay, let's build sites, let's build dashboards, let's build those data pipelines to connect all of this open data together to start to draw insights. And what came out of that over a year of work is actually now an open source platform called Ladder that anyone in the United States can look at over 50 different data sets at the neighborhood level, the census tract level, to identify what is happening in that community and what services could be provided in that community. And they can form a team and they can share that analysis, and they can form and they can upload their own data to share within that group. So that's going from a big problem. Central Florida needed to figure out how to provide services more quickly to our residents. An eager community of volunteers saying, I'll give my weekend to hacking on this problem, not necessarily for prize money or for entrepreneurship, but for the value of my community. And then I'm going to stick with that as a volunteer over time, and I'm going to work with existing sort of staff teams like DataKind to get that to become a reality. And now it's a tool that was just presented at New York City's Open Data Week and is being used in that community as well. So just kind of giving, I think we can all have many different examples, but wanted to lay that one out there as one example of going from this idea, could we solve this big problem, to the impact. It is a tool that exists out there in the world that anyone can use for free and is closing this huge impact and analysis gap.
Wow, like that's a mic drop. No, it's awesome just to see like how transformative, a community aligned, whether it be for social impact or whether it be for business advancement, it can be effective. I think you also mentioned some, is that the same tool that helped Osceola, or did you do another project, social impact project on there too?
Yeah, building on that success in 2023, in 2024, ODevs actually was the lead sponsor of something for Hacktoberfest, where for a month, that actually the month of October we supported our open source community toward working on the housing crisis in Central Florida. So a specific subset of the social impact space. What could we do to identify communities where rental assistance dollars should be put in? And that actually ended with a hackathon where we had teams across Central Florida building apps to compete, and we actually had cash prizes. And those teams went on to keep developing their tools, and they're amazing tools that have now been through almost a year of development. Where how do you get insurance to react quickly after a disaster, and how do you engage in policy? Actually, Jacques, one of the Pete team members, built a tool that called your representative about the housing crisis and how do you make a change. And so all of that, again, happened in a weekend, and it was teams formed to solve problems in our community.
That's awesome. Jacques, do you want to have anything to add about that tool?
Well, I didn't make it. Was one of the again another person I met in the community who is now a critical part of my team who made that. But yeah, they did. They made a tool that can essentially, using generative AI technology, can have a conversation with. You're not going to get the actual politician of the office, but you'll get a staff member, something who'll take it down. And so, yeah, it automates that process.
Cool. Well, on the thread of the hackathons, I also understand some of these hackathons come with prize opportunities if you're building and solving. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about that, Jacques.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, there's I think, I do think, the way that we support hackathons are kind of like the successor to what Open Orlando was doing over a longer period of time. For a lot of the themes tend to be more around how do we help the community, things like that. Sometimes there's startup infused ideas, but we will continue to do these hackathons at least once a year. Has kind of been our trend, and if there's anyone that sponsors the prize, the purse money for the prizes, then the teams that are that win those hackathons get to take home more than just bragging rights.
Nice.
Yeah,
I think that's top of mind in the ecosystem, right? There are founders that have ideas and they're looking for pre-seed money and opportunities. And I know, Chris, you were talking about some of the competitions that you guys offer over at Rollins, and maybe you want to provide a little more.
Well, I just know that through the Cromer Business School, they have a business plan competition, and there are certain criteria. So you have to be based in Orlando and have revenue under a certain threshold and be established for maybe a certain amount of time, presenting your business plan, and then there is a final, semifinal, and then of course a winner that receives some amount of money. Initial seed funding, and then of course in-kind services, mentorship through their professors there and local business people. So it's a great opportunity for any local startup here in Orlando looking to get to the next level.
Cool. Well, I mean, it's very evident in terms of the valuable role that ODevs plays in our innovation community, and it's exciting to be a part of that, OEP initiative. How do we all contribute? How do we contribute to economic advancement, whether it's in the early stage phase, whether it's more in the enterprise phase, when you're like Austin, I know he's working with a major enterprise to offer a whole new a new product within the ecosystem. Actually, did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah. So not just new companies have ideas. In the fitness realm, everyone is trying to do something AI. I mean, I guess that's really every realm. But fitness in particular, it actually has a lot of very valuable use cases. Whether that's people being intimidated by working out, whether that's them going to a gym and not knowing what to do, or they have a new piece of equipment at home and they don't want to, one of the big things is not getting absolutely crushed the first time you work out. So you want to build people up. And so we actually partnered with AWS to build a Gen AI platform last year. And so we're not a startup. We're a company that has an existing product with existing user bases. And we said, okay, we want to take this new product, and we want to get something, because we're partnered with Amazon on it. We want to get it to an MLP, a minimal lovable product, that we can release to users. We actually showed it at HFA this year. So it's used to be called URSA, but it's a big healthcare, big fitness show, essentially, where everybody's displaying all of their new stuff. And so we worked hands on keyboard with an Amazon team, with a product scope and a feature set, that we partnered together, we branded together, to release it to our customers, so they have a AI workout plan generator that takes into account their preferences on what classes they should be taking in order to improve the onboarding experience, which hopefully helps retention, those types of things where when you're playing the retention game of an existing customer base, it's all about finding the little percentages. So that's 1% and 2% sometimes. So how can I get this number 2% higher? When you're starting out earlier, you're looking at tens of percentage points. Right. By the time you're existing, you're looking at maybe a percentage or two. And so having a clear focus on what we were trying to build enabled us to launch that as an actual MLP that we're still continually working on and trying to improve. But it's not just small companies or startups or companies with 0 employees that have ideas. There's ways that those get executed inside of larger organizations as well.
That's exciting. Well, I think pulling the enterprise together, all those strategies, pulling the startup ecosystem, ODevs is also, obviously critical in terms of connecting the different people, the different market segments. I think there's some really interesting questions on how can we basically crowdsource the ODevs community to do greater impact for social good and community. I mean, Caitlin, you've already done a lot. I saw Chuck put in the link to ladders. I mean, it's awesome to see the impact. But is there the question that Tony asked, is there something more that we can do, or maybe Tony, if you put in the comments a certain problem that you have, maybe we can crowdsource the solution together, because obviously we have a huge community of problem solvers from the development perspective, right? And then connecting those with the other different communities and business idea leaders, may be impactful to help them.
Well, maybe, Paul, we can use this as a little bit of a call to action. So while ODevs is a 501c3, we are a fully volunteer organization. So every one of our events is done with volunteers, with donated space, often with donated pizza. And so we are only as strong as that community. So sure. I would say if there's a problem we want to solve, great. Raise your hand, reach out to us, let us help structure that event that you can lead the conversation at, and we can take that action. So it's a little bit of, we want to work on every problem. We want to keep building the strength of the Central Florida community. We want to give all of these opportunities and truly be the sort of no wrong door into the technology ecosystem. And we do that through volunteerism. So for everyone who's listening, please raise your hand. I'll put my email in the chat. There are a million ways you could get engaged. You can become one of our Patreons or patrons on Patreon. You can run a meetup. You can start posting the job board. You can offer mentorship. Many different ways to get engaged. And if you raise your hand, we'll make sure there's a place for you, and we'll tackle those problems.
Well, cool. Well, I think we'll come back and you'll share a link at the end that everybody can kind of sign up and get to learn a little bit more. But I wanted to really dive into this with the remaining time we have. There's a lot of founders that are getting from the idea stage, and they need to figure out how to get to MVP. Jacques, you've done that a few times. Maybe you want to kick that off and to just say, what are some of the things that should be going through our heads if we have a great idea, but hey, not a developer?
There's no better time to want to get into entrepreneurship and building a startup right now, especially with these AI coding tools. In fact, as a non-technical entrepreneur, I've seen some products released on the market that were completely developed without a software engineer. Coding was involved, but without leveraging AI agents to do it. I'll question. I don't think any of them have gone like super successful or scalable yet. But what I do think is really great is you can get either a prototype that you can share with a technical co-founder to say, here's my vision, here's how it can work, or to get customer feedback, or maybe a very early stage MVP that, again, you can get that early customer feedback, where in the past you would have had to kind of go through the process to like outsource to someone or find that technical co-founder first. And you can kind of do the reverse. You can start with the product that you want to build and then go out and source those other things. So I think it's a very different time. It's very exciting. The one caveat I would say is like, you can't go too long without at least having, an engineer be some sort of an advisor,
Sure.
because the problem is that you'll never know if, and likely not, that the product that you're showing would work if there were, even 5 users using it concurrently, or if you had more than a certain number of records, or need to scale it up, or hallucinated a bunch of code that is ultimately going to give you problems down the road.
Did it get frustrated deploying to AWS and then just left your security groups wide open for anyone to access?
Yeah, exactly. So what happens is your time to development, your time and cost of development goes down, but without an engineer kind of driving those tools in the long run, your time to sort of debug is probably even higher or infinite, right?
But I think that's great clarification. I think the looming question in the industry is, right, like, is AI going to take all development jobs, and what's the future of development, right?
What do you think, Austin? Are they going to take our jobs?
I was hoping you were going to answer the whatever estimated $6 trillion question this is. I think that there are things that AI can be extremely helpful with, as far as being impactful in the day-to-day. So, for example, like, there are times that you run into something that you need to deal with one time. Like, you need to take this data set and get it into a format that you can use. AI is incredibly resourceful at being able to do that. I have it write one-off scripts for me probably 2 times a week. Just a little Python, something that would have probably taken me an hour plus a little bit of debugging time, and it can give me a great head start on it. From the longer term perspective, I do think that there will be some impact as far as number of people required to build something, because I think those little cost savings are going to add up. But at its current state and its current trajectory, I don't see that being. I don't think you're going to see Netflix, for example, a high functioning engineering org solving problems that exist for Netflix that don't exist for anyone else, I don't know how impactful AI is going to be there for solving problems that exist at a scale that, once you get past like building a website and those types of things, and you're actually operating something that's complex, that has, take any fine tech service with PCI compliance and all those types of things, where a mistake there is incredibly expensive. I think at minimum there will always be humans in the loop at that level. I don't see it for a significant period of time. But Jacques, I'm interested to hear what your side. Tend to be more optimistic about this type of stuff than I am.
Yeah, I mean, I use it every day. It's something that I encourage the team members. We buy them licenses to all kinds of things. We share best practices, things that we've learned. We've kind of got there's things called like custom instructions, effectively, and you can actually set those even on a project level. So I know I'm diving a little bit too in the weeds, but I think what the end result of this is to echo what Austin's saying. Like, it's going to 10x the productivity of an engineer. I don't know that it an engineer with that tool is still going to be insanely more productive than someone who doesn't know anything about software development. I think, though, we can't ignore that there are downsides to all of this, right? And so
Sure.
one of those downsides is like, yeah, maybe if that productivity is 10x, then maybe do you need 1/10 of developers? Like, I don't know, maybe. And then if junior developers, if the AIs are now, let's call it at a junior developer level, then what's the demand for junior developers? And industry often has very short-term outlooks when it comes to this sort of thing. So, if the answer that companies think is the answer is like, oh, well, we're just not going to hire or invest in junior engineers anymore, since the AI can be the junior engineer. And then, 10 years from now, we're going to be like, well, we need, senior engineers who know how to run these tools, but, we don't have any because we didn't invest in, over the past decade in that. So, it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves. Obviously it will have impacts. I think they're just a little bit hard to predict, and the time scale is a little bit hard to predict.
But I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting in the future of education, right, Chris? Like, how do you prepare developers for this in the age of the AI transformation?
Right. So the educational programs are now, learning how to adapt their curriculum to include these tools, because you can't say to, the future of America, don't use any of these tools and just turn them off. You're right. They have to say, this is how we'll use them. And then, what Austin was saying, there are edge cases, right? So yeah, we know that certain operations can be done and have been done by using a set of tools, but there's that last 1% or even 0.1% of the code in every project that needs to be done by a human. We had about 25 years ago what we called RAD, Rapid Application Development. And that was supposed to also, put us all out of a job, and we're still here. So
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited about our conversation this morning. I'm excited about the awareness for the larger Orlando innovation community, and the awareness of all the good efforts that ODevs is doing right now. Just to kind of wrap it up, I want to go around the room. If you have one piece of advice or one suggestion for the community in terms of innovation or the future of development, I'd just love to kick that off. Austin, can I go to you first?
Sure. I would say my biggest piece of advice that I've seen happen quite a few times is, if you think you have a product and you think you have a product market fit, and you build a roadmap to MVP, be very, very, very careful about what you allow to interrupt and influence that roadmap. You need to make sure that it is incredibly impactful to your product, because time and time again, We see people who come in with an idea, they want to build this widget, and then they get sidetracked because the industry's migrating this way or whatever it might be, and they decide that, oh, well, let's just fast follow this a little bit so we have this thing too. And you kind of lose sight on what your differentiator is, or what your impact to the market was going to be. And if you do that for too long, you're going to miss your window in the market, because eventually someone else can stumble upon that idea, and maybe they're already in your market. Maybe they're they already have an established dev team. So I would say that if you feel very confident in your roadmap and in what you want to build, be very protective of that, because that can be the timing decision between whether or not your product succeeds, or if you missed market timing, which can be incredibly detrimental. So
that clarity and focus is so key. Chris?
I would say, even if you work a full-time job, it's good to go through those little experiences of just having a product that you can own, or a project that you can own, right? You have no boss, you technically have no deadline, but and I think that it's a good experience, and it helps you grow, and you can learn things that you can apply to your everyday life as well.
Awesome. And Jacques?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think if you're starting out something, especially if you're trying to take an angle with AI is unlocking a lot of software ideas that couldn't have been done before. However, it's advancing at such a rapid pace. You hear these stories of startups that built themselves around what they perceive as a gap in the existing AI technologies or something like that, and then it becomes released as like some feature in ChatGPT, and their whole product is gone. So my recommendation for those folks starting it now is, one is just make sure you get it, at least, even if you're using no code solutions, get an engineer to kind of look over those things with you. And then if you're building something, really focused on generative AI, that you build something that gets better as the models and the AI technology gets better, not where it becomes disintermediated by advancements in AI.
Yeah, for sure. Things are happening so rapidly, right? You got a structure for scaling. So appreciate that. And Caitlin, wrap us up this morning.
Yeah, I'll just say my biggest advice is show up. I wouldn't have shown up at a Lady Devs event, almost a decade ago, if someone hadn't invited me, and that changed the trajectory of my career. I did study groups that did product management. I got certifications. I grew in the community in Orlando. So show up and be humble and learn as much as possible in that community, because you will be able to advance and you will be able to make an impact.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, I'm excited that everybody showed up this morning for our conversation. If you have any need to reach out, or there's a link to share, Caitlin, reach out to Caitlin. I saw her email in the feed there, so you have resources. There's a number of links to the websites. But thanks, ODevs, for being such a great partner in the Orlando innovation ecosystem. Some amazing insights, and I think some great resources that other people weren't necessarily aware. And it's obvious that when you do show up, I mean, good things happen, not only for your business, not only for advancing your career or finding the next job, but really advancing social impact. So I want to thank you all for that. And thank you for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.